Hello AFDA students. Welcome to our third video lesson today, which is going to be fractions and equations. We want to be able to solve equations that contain fractions. Some of our terminology today is simplify, radical, common denominator, like terms, and LCD. Here's a real world problem sort of featuring a fraction in it. So let's see what we can learn from this problem. You'll see how to solve these type problems today. It says Peyton's semester grade in college algebra class is the average over 3 test grades in her final exam. If her test grades are 87, 93, and 91, what must she score in her final exam to make a 90 for the class? Write an equation and solve. Well, we have probably 4 things that we need to look at. We have 3 test grades, an 87, a 93, and a 91, plus that 4th thing, which is the exam grade. And you know from average, you would add all those up and divide by 4. And we want this to equal a 90 for the class. Well, you know about like terms, and these are all numerical terms, so you know you could add those up. You would get a 271, I think, plus an E, all divided by 4. That would get the average still, just clean that up a little bit, all equal to 90. Now, what you're going to learn today is how to get rid of that 4, and the way to get rid of that 4 that's dividing all that stuff is to multiply by 4. Seems logical. So if you do that, these 4's are going to go away, make a nice big 1. So you wind up with this equation now, 271 plus E is going to equal 4 times 90 is 360. So to solve it now, all you have to do is subtract 271 from both sides. So you wind up with E is equal to 89. So there's your answer. That's what Peyton must score on that exam to get an A for that class, or 90. So let's scroll down and see how this works a little better. So everybody go to example 1 with me. I'll clear this out of the way. It says 3a plus 1 all divided by 5 equals 2. Same big long fraction bar, what we learned up there above, how to get rid of it. We're going to multiply both sides by that fraction, or that denominator down here in the fraction, which is 5. That clears that out, makes a 1. So we wind up with an equation that looks like this. 3a plus 1 is equal to 10. Now you recognize that as a 2-stepper, so you can go to town on it. Subtract 1 from both sides, you get 3a is equal to 9, divide by 3, and you have a is equal to 3. Now, check that for me, that a equals 3 is the solution. All you have to do is plug in 3 right there. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10, divided by 5 is 2. So that checks. So, let's look at this one here. I don't like the fraction, so I'm going to get rid of it, that big fraction bar, by multiplying by that single denominator, which is 3, and now I have 5a plus 7 minus 3a equals negative 27. Now, that's not a 2-stepper yet, but I know how to combine like terms from last time, so 5a, or last lesson, 5a minus 3a is 2a, plus 7 is equal to negative 27. I subtract 7 from both sides, and I get 2a is equal to negative 34. Divide by 2, and I have a is equal to negative 17, I believe. So check that, see if negative 17 is the answer there. Now, if we have a big fraction bar with a single denominator in an equation, we clear that denominator by multiplying both sides of the equation by it. So that's what we did up there. So that's the first trick you learned. Get rid of that denominator by multiplying both sides by it. Now, move on over to the other side of your notes here. We're going to keep going here pretty quickly. Now, over on this side, it says find the lowest common denominator for each pair of fractions. So we have a 2/3 and a 1/2. So if you remember, to find the lowest common denominator, or the LCD, least common denominator, you have to think of multiples of 3 and 2. So 3, 6, 9, 12, and so forth. 2 would be 2, 4, 6. The first number that I mentioned that they have in common is 6. You could do the same thing with 2 and 7. You'd wind up with 14. Now, sometimes if you multiply those together, you will get a common denominator, and sometimes it's the least common denominator. But look at this. If you multiply those together, 4 and 8, you would get 32. But you want to think of multiples, which is 4, 8. Multiples of 8 would be 8, 16. The first one they have in common is 8. Likewise here with these denominators, looking at 5 and 10. LCD is going to be a 10. You wouldn't want to multiply those together. This guy right here, 5 and 3, you're going to wind up with 15. So, to find the LCD, think of multiples of the denominator. So that's your trick there. Now, of these denominators that you have. So here's an example in equation form. We have two fractions. Their denominators are 4 and 2. Think about what the LCD is there. It's 4. 4 is the LCD. So all you have to do to clear up these two fractions, in this case, is multiply everything across the board. These terms, or whatever terms you might have over there, by 4. So 1/4 of 4 is 1. 1 times x is x. Half of 4 is 2. And 3 times 4 is equal to 12. So here's your new equation without fractions. Can you solve it? Sure you can. Just subtract 2 from both sides, and you have x is equal to 10. Likewise over here, you have 3 denominators, 3 fractions. What is the LCD for all 3 of those? Well, think about multiples of those. It's going to be 12. So just go across and multiply everything by 12. Okay? So 1/3 of 12 is 4. Half of 12 is 6. And 3/4 of 12, you can do, I'm doing this sort of in my head, you can do 3 times 12 divided by 4, or you can do 12 divided by 4 times 3. No matter how you do that, you're going to wind up with 9 right there, simplified. Here's your new equation. Can you solve it? Absolutely. Subtract 6 from both sides. You get 4a is equal to 3. Divide by 4. And you have a is equal to 3/4. I'm going to leave that as a fraction because my equations had fractions in it. Let's finish up here a little bit. We're on the home stretch. We got one thing to answer in our last example. Now, I'm going to go ahead and clear this off. Now, it says to solve an equation that has 2 or more fractions, multiply both sides, that's all terms, of the equation by the LCD. You guys know what that stands for, least common denominator. Now, this equation right here, example 3, just has 1 fraction in it. It's not a big long fraction bar, and it almost looks like a 2-stepper. So let's try that. Let's attack it like it is a 2-stepper, okay? And we would get rid of that plus 7, but we still have 3/4 b is equal to -12. Here's a little trick that we're going to use here. We're going to get rid of that lone fraction in front of the variable by multiplying by its reciprocal. Here's all you have to do for the reciprocal. Just flip that fraction over, make it 4/3, and multiply both sides by it. So 4 times 3 is 12, 3 times 4 is 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1. Now, you're going to find out that any number times its reciprocal is 1. So that gets rid of that guy. Over here, you got -12 times 4, which is -48 divided by 3, which is going to be a -16. You could do -12 divided by 3 and then times that by 4 and come up with the same answer. On to the next one. Looking at it like it's a 2-stepper in this case, we'll wind up with 3/5 m. We subtracted 4 from both sides, all equal to -9. My trick here is to multiply by the what? Reciprocal. Very good. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 5/3. Negative times a positive, that's, our answer is going to be negative. I think we come up with negative 15. 9 times 5 is 45, divided by 3 is 15. Don't forget your sign. Any number times its reciprocal is 1, right here. That makes it 1. 1 times m is m. So, with fractional coefficient, that's a number in front of the variable. Just solve the equation using your steps and multiply by the reciprocal. So I need to put the reciprocal on the last step. Don't forget your check step, 3 things that you learn. Big fraction bar with 1 denominator, multiply that by that 1 denominator. Lots of fractions in your equation, multiply by the LCD. And if you have 1 fraction just in front of the variable, work it down to the very end and then multiply by its reciprocal. Thanks for watching.